Greg here. I'm going to tie a Hotwire Prince. Really like the Hotwire Prince. It's kind of a knockoff of a Prince and a copper john, kind of a combination. It's got a tungsten bead, so it makes this fly really heavy. So it's perfect for a point fly. Also, the wiring on this will have two colors of wire, and it really gives some nice coloration to the fly. And I will get started on this. I'll just kind of run through some materials first. We're going to do a Umpqua 5262. We're going to mount a 3/32 gold tungsten bead on it. Then I'm going to center that bead with some lead wire. We'll talk a little bit about that. Then I'm also going to use biots for both the tail and for the wing or the horn on that, just like you would on a regular Prince Nymph. I'm going to use two colors of wire. One is in a brassy size, and this is the green. And then in a one size smaller, we're going to use this hot yellow. Both by Wapsi Company. Thread, of course, I'm going to use some Dansville 6/0. Let me pull that out for you. Some 6/0 or 70 denier thread in black. Going to go a little old school with the thread today. Going to make a little thorax with some peacock herl, and we'll put in a little collar at the front of some hen hackle, and then back to the goose for the wing, and that'll be it. So I'll get started on this. First thing we're going to do, of course, put the bead on, which I've already done, and then I'm going to wrap about 7 wraps of lead, maybe 8 here. I'm going to break that off, and then this will slide right into the bead, centering it and holding it in place. Next, I'll attach my thread. And at this point, I'm just going to bring my thread right back to the bend of the fly, or the hook, right above the barb of the hook, creating just a little thread base. And then with these biots, what I'm going to do is oppose those so that they go out into opposite directions, and I'll show you what that looks like before I mount these. So they have a natural curve to them, so you just want those to go in opposite direction. So at this point, I'm just going to measure how long I want that tail, which is usually about the gap of the hook, maybe just a pinch longer. And if I set those right on top of the hook, a little bit on my side, but just barely straddling the hook, I'm going to do a couple of just little slight soft wraps. Then I'm just going to start tightening up, moving forward, right up to the lead. Then when I let go, I can check and make sure that those are placed properly. And then I'm going to bring my thread straight back, holding on to those tails so they don't move around on me. secure those right in place. Cut these little pieces off. If we look at that tail, you can see that it's nicely split, and those tails are right on top of the hook shank. Now I'm just going to build myself just a slight little underbody so it tapers from the tail up to this thorax. Because if we leave any gaps or bumps, we're going to have to deal with that later on, and we'll never be able to recover from that. Okay. I'm going to bring my thread about 1 eye width behind the bead. And I've peeled off this wire already. Even those up. I'm going to tie those right on my side of the hook, or the near side as we refer to. And I'm going to bring them right down on my side of the hook. Fairly consistent wraps all the way back. And then you really want to make sure that these last 3 or 4 wraps are super tight right at the back. You don't want the wire to creep underneath the thread as we start those wraps. Then I can just bring this right back up to there, and then just so that you can see that on the camera where that wire is placed. Now we can pick both of these up perpendicular to the hook. I'm going to make 1 wrap all the way around. And then I'm just going to work my way forward. But as I wrap, I'm leaning my wire backwards. What happens is the previous wrap acts kind of like a rail, and the wire will fall right into place without leaving any gaps. Shouldn't be able to see any black wire or black thread with this when we're done. That should do it. Tie that off with a couple of wraps, make sure it's tight. And at this point, I just separate those wires, and then I'm just going to helicopter them around, and they will find its breaking point and snap right off. Now I usually use strong peacock herl for this. Sometimes the peacock herl gets a little bit too big, out of proportion. So I have a lot of peacock herl that I've used where I've cut out the center of the eye for my pheasant tails. You can kind of see that little gap there. And then I'll use this stuff for big fluffy prince nymphs. But usually this stuff in through here, I normally just throw away. So I thought, well, I'm going to use this. We'll do about, I don't know, 4 strands or so. And 3 to 4, it's not that critical. Cut those tips so they're all even. Then right here I'll do just a little soft wrap, place that right in the place, get it out of my area I don't want it. Come back to the wire, maybe just a little bit on top of it. And then I'm just going to wrap this forward. I'm going to do about 5 wraps there. I go right up to the bead. Now we'll get some hen, kind of stroke this back, cut out the piece that we don't need, and I'm going to strip off some fibers off the stem. And I'm going to place this straight down, tie that in with a couple of wraps. Now I do have this little piece of stem here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that backwards, tie that in, and you can later go in there and cut that out. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to grab the hackle plier, put it onto the stem, wet my fingers just to fold this hackle back onto the stem, and then I'm going to wrap this forward. 2-3 turns should do it. And then tie that off. Oops. Stem broke. Okay. Tie that off. And then what you can do is just sweep all of this back, trap it alongside of the fly, and then wrap backwards a couple of turns just to make sure that's all trapped down. Little cone there. What I'm doing there is I'm spinning my thread clockwise just to tighten it back up. Now we're going to grab our little white goose biots. I'm forming a little X to them. Little cross. And then right where it crosses, that's where I'm going to tie that in. So I pinch back down with my material hand. Make sure your thread is tight. See, that slipped a little bit, so let me redo that. If your thread ties this in right where those two pieces cross, that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So we'll do one, and I'm wrapping backwards at this point. Make sure that's really tight. Then I can come in here and check, see how I like those. Those look pretty good. So at this point, I'm going to give it one more wrap just to make sure. And then without really letting go of my wings over here with my material hand, I'm going to come in here and bend that goose back. Cut it. I'm going to do that again on this side. At this point, just kind of clean that back up. And then we can whip finish. I'd say kind of what we want to try to do here is this little black collar of thread really shouldn't be too much wider than the eye of the hook. That's kind of what I look for when I'm looking for a well-tied fly, in this case, for this guy. I don't know if I accomplished that, but I think it's pretty close. Then what I like to do too is come in and set these wings up just a pinch. Basically, I'm just putting a little crease in there. That's just for me. And then, of course, some head cement does not hurt for this. Let that soak in. And that is a hot wired Prince. Really nice, heavy fly. Great little point fly. This coloration works really well for a caddis. You can tie them in all different colors, red and yellow, more natural colors in a brown and a copper. So just have some fun with this. And remember, 2 sizes of wire, a brassy, and then small for the other complementary color on that. Thanks.